For more on gun control efforts and the day's top political stories, let's welcome in Caitlin Huey-Burns, Scott MacFarlane, and Marquis Francis. Caitlin is a CBS News political reporter. Scott is a CBS News congressional correspondent, and Marquis is a senior national reporter for Yahoo News. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Marquis, I want to start with you. We have heard from the president several times since the Uvalde shooting. Why is he addressing the nation again?
Well, he's addressing the nation again just simply because he has to. As much as, Congress has not been able to come together on a bipartisan support on gun legislation, the president has to keep the faith in the country, right? He was mulling this decision. There was reports before last night in Tulsa where 4 people were shot and killed. And obviously now, one day later, he's giving this address to the nation. And we're entering the 6th month of the year. And there's already been over 230 mass shootings in the U.S. this year alone. And so this is definitely an issue that has been something, a problem for a very long time. And for a lot of people, enough is enough. Enough was enough 10 years ago with Sandy Hook, 5 years prior with Virginia Tech. I mean, you continue to go down the list of times where there's been mass shootings, and you would think it's time for Congress to step up. And a lot of things have been happening in Congress, in the White House, behind closed doors. The House, there seems to be some support that they can get some gun legislation across the line, but it seems to continue to die in the Senate. And that's where things need to happen. So I think President Biden is looking to, once again, talk not only to the country with this address tonight, but also to Congress and really be able to hold them accountable. And we can't forget we have midterm elections coming up later this year. And so if folks aren't being held accountable, they will be held accountable at the ballot box later this year. And so the president is doing what he should and could as far as addressing the nation, but we really need Congress to step up in a major way.
Caitlin, the House Judiciary Committee held a markup on several gun control bills today, but the rhetoric from both sides was once again on party lines.
It has not even been 24 hours since the last mass shooting, and who knows how long until the next one. Too soon? My friends, what the hell are you waiting for?
No one wants another tragedy. No one wants this to happen again. That's why it's regretful that Democrats have rushed to a markup today in what seems more like political theater than a real attempt at improving public safety or finding solutions.
Caitlin, realistically, what can get done here?
Hey, Nicole. Well, you played those excerpts, and that really does describe how this is all falling on partisan lines, at least in the House. Another really notable moment in that hearing was when a Republican congressman from Florida actually held up several of his different firearms and argued that they would be banned under this new proposal that would place a ban on high-capacity magazines. And that's really what the highlights of this House measure would be. This is a broad package, but ban on high-capacity magazines and also raising the age limit to purchase a semi-automatic rifle would be raised from 18 to 21. There's some other measures in there as well. But bottom line, this is really a messaging bill coming from the House to be able to show that they are taking action to get people on record and also to put that pressure on the other side of the Capitol on the Senate. But this bill has no chance of passing through the Senate. There is not support for any of these measures, not enough support for any of these measures. Notably missing from this particular passage in the House is a ban on assault weapons. This is something that Nancy Pelosi talked about earlier this week, saying that she would bring it up later after this package. It's something that Biden supports, but it is a non-starter in the Senate. Last time it was proposed, it only gotten about 40 votes in the Senate side. So over on the other side of the Capitol, you have this bipartisan group that's really trying to work on what can actually get through that chamber and onto the president's desk. So they're looking at very narrow provisions here. And so they're trying to be realistic about what they can do, whereas the House is trying to send a big message with this piece of legislation. Notably, you had some moderate Democrats today on the House side say, let's break this up a little bit. Let's try to get things through that we know can actually get it signed into law. Those moderate Democrats looking for some way to show consensus as they're running in some tough races.
Well, as you just mentioned, talks on gun control are continuing on the Senate side, largely led by Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy. Both he and fellow Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal spoke earlier today. Let's take a listen.
Senator Blumenthal and I met yesterday with a bipartisan group of members. There are more Republicans engaged today than ever before in these talks. We've had really productive discussions. Our goal is to get a piece of legislation that saves lives.
These conversations have been very productive and encouraging, but we're very clear-eyed about the history here. There have been more failures and very few successes, and there is still a lot of work to do, a lot of hurdles to overcome.
Caitlin, how does what's happening in the Senate compare to what's happening in the House?
Well, the Senate is taking a much more realistic approach because they know that they don't have the numbers to pass anything unless they get 10 Republicans on board. That is why they're looking at a very narrow set of proposals here. As we've talked about before, they're really kind of focusing in on these red flag laws, but focusing it not as a big federal law, but giving essentially grants to the states to try to incentivize them to implement red flag laws in the states. We've seen Republican states pass red flag laws at the local level. Indiana has one that Mike Pence had touted. It's something former President Trump had said he supported. Florida passed one after the Parkland shooting. But talking to Republican lawmakers last week on Capitol Hill, it was very apparent that there is very little appetite to move any sort of big piece of legislation when it comes to guns. And it's been interesting to hear from Mitch McConnell, who made news earlier in the last week when he tapped John Cornyn to work with this bipartisan group, kind of blessed those discussions. But when McConnell's been back in Kentucky this week, he's been trying to kind of temper expectations for this kind of bill, saying that he wants to find consensus that's consistent with the Second Amendment, doesn't infringe upon any rights, and said that he wants to focus on school safety and mental health. So whatever comes out of this bipartisan meeting, expect it to be a pretty narrow provision.
Marquis, certainly another big topic around the country right now is gas prices. They continue to climb, reaching a new record high of $4.71 today. To combat that, President Biden is considering asking Saudi Arabia to boost production. But what problems might that pose for someone who once called the Saudi crown prince a, quote, pariah for his role in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi?
Oh, absolutely. That would definitely just pose, basically a public humbling of sorts for the U.S. leader. In 2019, he called, Mohammed bin Salman a pariah for the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. And basically, he'd have to go back on that. Obviously, U.S. gas prices are pretty much at record highs, and the supply is, basically going away. And so he has to do something. And so this wouldn't be the first time we've seen a president kind of go back on his word and do something in an effort to help the American people. But doing so definitely would change some of his outlook to the rest of the world in getting this done.
Scott, turning to the January 6th investigation, former Attorney General Bill Barr appeared before the Select Committee today. How significant is this?
Well, the committee has been trying to get inside the Trump inner circle as deeply as they can before their first committee hearing next Thursday. Hard to get much deeper between November 6th and the end of December than with the then Attorney General William Barr. There have been proposals to get as many witnesses public as the committee can. It's unlikely Bill Barr is going to sit and testify at one of these public hearings, but getting this testimony in the 11th hour is going to inform what this committee shows the public starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time next Thursday. We also know the committee has been exploring the role played by several members of Congress, including Pennsylvania Republican Scott Perry, who, according to court filings in some civil litigation by the January 6th committee, is suspected of texting Mark Meadows about an effort to reconfigure, if not overhaul, the U.S. Justice Department between Election Day and January 6th. No doubt the then Attorney General would have something to tell the committee about this, but this is a last high-profile witness with just days remaining, Nicole, till the committee goes public to show America all that it's found.
Yeah, and as we know, Scott, the committee just announced the first of several hearings expected this month, public hearings. What is your latest reporting on those hearings and what we can expect?
Yeah, the committee formally announced what's been an open secret here in Washington and what it's been saying in court filings over the past week. The first hearing is going to be next Thursday. It's going to be in prime time. It's going to be on television, right where the committee wants it to be. Here's what we know they're not going to have. They have surrendered the idea of getting some of the key records they wanted before these hearings began. In a court filing a few days ago, reviewed by CBS News, the committee says it will not get all those emails it's been seeking from the Republican National Committee and its contractor. They've been fighting to get them. They think they're valuable to show what political efforts predate the Capitol riot. The committee acknowledged to the court it's not going to happen. Not by the start of these hearings next Thursday. We know they've subpoenaed 5 of their own colleagues, 5 U.S. House Republicans, including the highest-ranking House Republican, Leader Kevin McCarthy. It's clear they're not going to have any cooperation from those 5 before the hearings begin, and there's been no move toward a subpoena. It's unclear if even a subpoena would be functional against a fellow member of Congress. So they're going to come to the table next Thursday with about 1,000 interviews, with tens of thousands of pieces of paper. My contacts in the committee say the records they have on Mark Meadows are especially impactful, but they won't have some of the highest level interviews. They won't have their 5 colleagues. Unlikely they'll have Mark Meadows, Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro, the trade advisor, or Dan Scavino, the social media manager for Donald Trump.
Well, it's certainly shaping up to be a busy June for sure. Caitlin Huey-Burns, Scott MacFarlane, and Marquis Francis, thanks so much.